Explode the value of your law firm with digital marketing. Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. I am Victoria Collier, and this is the Smart Lawyers Position and Transition podcast. And I am with our guest, Seth Price, founder and CEO of BluShark Digital, and we will be discussing digital marketing to grow a law firm. Smart Lawyers Position and Transition transforms the lives of attorneys who want better, more valuable law firms that in time can sell and find a life after law. The information provided is not intended to be legal, financial, or any other kind of advice, just good information and entertainment. So when I was a paralegal, Seth, down in South Georgia in 1995 to 1997, marketing was literally a bad word. And, reputation, word of mouth were the only way to get clients. But back then, lawyers also didn't operate businesses. They had practices, and they sure didn't, position them to sell. They just kind of closed down or died at their desk. And so things are different, and when we know better, we do better. And so I am so excited to have you, Seth Price, with us today, who definitely knows how to do better and helps law firms also do better. Well, Seth is an accomplished attorney and transformational thought leader. He is a founding partner and the business backbone of Price Benowitz Accident Injury Lawyers, as well as the founder and CEO of BluShark Digital. Seth took a two-person law firm and scaled it to 36 lawyers in less than a decade. Now he has taken the same digital power that built the firm to create a best-in-class digital agency focused on the legal sector in BluShark Digital. Seth has been a frequent lecturer and moderator at some of the largest and most influential law conferences in the United States, speaking on the tools and strategies law firms can use to align their business development with changing consumer habits. Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to say for us today, Seth. Thanks for being here.
No, it's great to be here. As you say this, it's pretty, we've done a lot over the last couple of decades, and I think something you said in the intro struck home, because my dad was one of those lawyers, still practicing in '89, but he has a practice, and he, hopefully keeps going for a while. But at '89, I'm like, you got a plan? No, don't have a plan. I mean, he's a senior counsel to me, but he's with a firm in New York, and at some point, there's somebody there to back him up, but there's no thought of any sort of exit, and that it's all his name, and that as you think about the idea of what you have that's marketable to sell, one of those things I assume is making yourself non-essential, because if you are essential, then you don't really have that much to sell.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we talk about all the time. But, I thought you had said that he was practicing in '89, but what you said is he is 89 and still practicing. Yeah. So the epitome of, probably died his desk, right? Because that's what his generation does.
I mean, he doesn't have any hobbies. He loves it. It keeps him sharp. His friends have dropped or lost, and he keeps going, and I'm convinced that a large portion of it is that. So you got to do what's right for you. Just like there are people that want to scale their firms, and I was with John Fisher last weekend. He's one lawyer and runs this amazing firm, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's what drives you.
Absolutely. And so what drives you? So you had a dad that's a lawyer who's still practicing. You have started and created your own law firm, plus now BluShark Digital as well. Tell us what motivates you, and are you taking the path of your dad, or are you doing things different?
The complete opposite. Like he's amazing. I mean, look, he's a Harvard law graduate who had built a very nice life for our family. We were sort of upper middle class New York people. He had sort of a small business, transactional, trust and estates. At this point, it's all trust and estates practice. But he's a true practitioner. And he made his name by speaking at ABA events and local bar association events, and that was business development for him. And he loved it. We would go to conferences in the sectors he worked in, but there was no outward-facing marketing. One thing I would include that was big back in the day was the Martindale-Hubbell directory. And the fact that that's now owned by like internet brands, which is sort of like the lead gen of lead gens, it just blows the mind of that generation that you could buy yourself an AV. I know you can't, but it's pretty darn close. So, I went the opposite route. I went to law school never intending to practice. I got out. The economy was not great in '95. And so I grabbed one of the big firm jobs that paid nicely, did it 2.5 years, couldn't take it, was not good at it. wanted to be one of the clients. I was doing transactional primarily, and when doing transactional, I thought what they were doing was really interesting. The stock option plans and the rolling up of companies, that was all fascinating, but I wanted to be a client, not a practicing lawyer. So when my buddy from college and law school, Dave Benowitz, and I, he's a lawyer's lawyer, public defender in D.C., one of the best training grounds in the country. When he burnt out from defending people without money, we decided to divide and conquer, where I would be the business and operations marketing, and he would be the legal acumen and the chief legal officer. And so from day one, I never had a caseload, which has allowed me to sort of focus on nothing but building the firm. I think that the bio's even out of date at this point, 44 lawyers and growing, and all 90% from digital marketing. We've added in some radio this year, maybe a little TV to come in the next quarter.
Don't get ahead of us. Don't get ahead of us yet.
Sure.
I have a question in the back,
Sure.
and that is, why does someone go to law school for 3 years and pay all that money if you don't ever intend to practice to begin with?
I think to a certain extent it was check the box, homage to Dad. Of his buddies, the number of people that were practicing was limited from when I was growing up. One was a very famous First Amendment lawyer, I'm sure you know, Floyd Abrams. He practices, and he may, they tell you when you go to Cahill, go there, but don't intend to work with Floyd. Like, he's the highest of the high First Amendment. But his other buddies, one ran a major movie store in California, another one had an operation importing European cars through Spain to Americans at a huge tax deal. So most of his friends used their law degrees in ways that weren't in the courtroom. And so I checked the box. It was a good fallback. Parents were well enough to do that they were supporting it. And frankly, in the early 90s, the go-go 80s had ended. It wasn't like there were massive opportunities sitting there. So the opportunity costs were pretty low. And I, use that as an opportunity just to sort of build the whole, person that will eventually run businesses.
Right. And so then how do you have that conversation or convince a partner that you want to go into owning a law firm together, but I don't plan to do any legal work,
Well, really, it was, look, in this case, we've known each other since 87, same UPenn, same fraternity, took the same year off, went to law school together, same section, same writing section, it was destined. He loves the courtroom and had an amazing name. In fact, when we started the firm, for the first year, I called it the Law Office of David Benowitz, even though it was an equal 50-50 partnership, because I'm like, people could point arrows at me. I'm not the greatest lawyer in the world, but nobody could do that at him. He's now teaches at Harvard Law, and so we needed to change the name when we wanted to hire more people. It's like I call it the mother-in-law factor. You want to be at a firm that sounds like it's legit rather than just somebody's law office, and the changing of that and branding it as a firm really served us well. That was never an issue. There's no resentment because I can't do what he does and he can't do what I do.
No, and it sounds like y'all are just really maximizing your skill sets as well. And so how did you go from the two of you to now 44 lawyers in a decade? How'd you scale that fast? Because, we hear all the time that, you just can't find good people. I don't have the money to hire anybody. And with personal injury, my goodness, it's feast or famine. You hear that all the time. So talk to us about that.
Sure. So we started with criminal defense, which was fee for service. And in this case, there was just a hole in the market. There were people that had scaled or marketed criminal defense firms, like 4 or 5 lawyers, but they were terrible. There were plenty of solos that were amazing lawyers, but they were sort of the practice people, terrible business people, many of whom have since been disbarred or had other sort of unfortunate things happen. It's a very vicious space, a lot of bar issues with the IOLTA account, it's terrible. And so we said, hey, we think this can be done at scale, bringing together great legal talent with great marketing. It just hadn't been done in our region before. And built a website, hired another lawyer, built a website. And our first hires were, frankly, and you appreciate this, came on as law clerks that had passed the bar, but we couldn't afford a full lawyer. And within 3 weeks, we're like, Mazel tov, you're now a full attorney with us. And that sort of served us well. We then used leveraged digital to move in state by state, from D.C. to Maryland to Virginia, eventually South Carolina. And we layered practice areas. So we started with criminal, and we've done a nice job scaling that. We now have a really nice regional personal injury and medical malpractice practice. And the areas downwind of PI, like family and trust and estates, I can market them more easily than I can find great people who want to do them. Meaning finding great talent that will work with you and don't want to do their own thing is not nothing. And hiring great people is really, we talk about culture and we talk about putting but part of the reason you have to do that is you have to have a platform that people want to be at. And we've been very blessed with people with us 10, 12, 15 years. But I think it's a combination of recruiting properly, giving people a place that's their own, and at the same time economically making sure that you're taking care of them.
It's interesting to hear you say that, lawyers don't necessarily want to be in the trust and estates area, and that it's hard to hire that because I hear so many, retired PI people that go into estate work because they don't want to do litigation anymore. So I think if you just wait long enough and kind of hang out the water cooler of PI people, that maybe there's the opportunity for the estates.
Victoria, that's the issue with my model. Not that we would discriminate against anybody, we take anybody, but the person we want somebody who wants to build their own practice. And so very often somebody at the end of their career, that's not what they're looking for. We need somebody with the drive, because we pay people on a percentage of what they do. And so we want them to have unlimited potential, 2, 3, 4, 500,000 based on how hard they want to work and how much they want to hustle. And so the only way that works is if they have that upside. And generally that's been the issue, that we need to find people that fit into our model because we can generate the work. The question is, will people hustle to close it and monetize it?
Right. So we're gobbling up all these young lawyers who want to build their practices and have a great lifestyle, things like that. But in order to feed them, we have to have client acquisition as well. So how do we get all the clients that can, fill the funnel, if you will, so that it does work for everybody?
I mean, look, there are a lot of different ways, right? There's no right or wrong answer. There are people that network. There are people that do TV. I found my passion and the hole in the market with digital. Organic digital has paid dividends beyond belief. It's not for the faint of heart. It takes investment. And now that we've replicated this at BluShark for over 250 law firms, I've learned a lot. I've created some sort of general rules, which I hope will be helpful for the audience, that less than 400,000 in gross revenue is my sort of artificial line, unless there's independent capital or family money, that I generally don't push or suggest advanced SEO, but rather a basic website, maybe focus on local, but that you don't have the resources, and that if you spend as much as you need to get over the hump. The thing about organic search is it's like building a house, right? You have to build the foundation, you got to frame it, you got to drywall it, you got to close it in. Until you finish it, it's not worth a heck of a lot. And so you have to have enough resources to finish the project. If you have an investment house and you run out of money during framing, everything goes away. And that's what I don't want to see. So we've sort of made our own set of unofficial rules to protect people, because we now created a Silver Shark product at like $2,000 a month that gets a website, that creates the fundamentals, but isn't pretending to do more. The greatest frustration, the reason I didn't do lower dollar SEO originally, was people would talk past each other. For $2,500, I'm going to do full SEO. What can you really do? If you unbundle a business agreement and you take a 20% profit margin and you take that out and you're like, okay, this is the money to be spent on your company this month. What can be really done to push the needle forward? And I've been sort of, very introspective about how do you provide enough value to justify what you're doing, rather than just sort of saying it and like letting somebody go through it and just circling out. My real goal is to build a building block that will allow them to start at 200,000. As they get more, they can say, yes, now it's time to invest more, but not drain somebody of resources too early.
So let me see if I summarize. Let me summarize and see if I get what you just said. If you're less than 200,000, you should be doing just local networking and all that kind of stuff.
400,000 is my opinion.
I was going to go from 200 to 400 is where you would start spending the 2,000 a month to the Silver Shark stuff, and then above 400 is your BluShark, where it's really focused on SEO and stuff.
I think that I've never made that demarcation in the middle, but it's not, that is logical. It depends, right? There are people that have savings when they get out, but I just don't want to see that drained. And so the answer is to get the first things going. That doesn't need necessarily, you still, I think, should have a website early and Google Business Profile as soon as possible, because you're paying dividends, and both a website and a Google Business Profile have age associated from Google's perspective. So that if you want to build something and you're 27 years old and you say, hey, I'm starting, the fact that you're paying your dues with even a Wix website, GoDaddy website, something with 10 pages of content and a Google Business Profile that's free, those things aging and adding a review once a month, God forbid, twice a month, if you're aggressive 4 times a month, all of a sudden you have an asset that when you want to build on top of it, you're not starting flat-footed, but rather a running start.
Well, I love that word asset that you just used, because we talk about building assets within the law firm all the time, especially when we want to look to sell the law firm. So talk to us about how this is an asset, not just the website, but you're building on top of it and all that, and how do you see it as an asset for a firm?
Well, look, the thing that I like about it is that once you've optimized a website and it's in the search results for what you're looking for, and you have offices if you're doing local search, and something I evangelize a lot, which is opening multiple offices in compliance with Google's guidelines, that once you've done that, the phone is ringing, regardless of your networking. Not that it's not better with your networking, and even you'll get your network cases and you'll get people that top of mind, but that when you are looking to sell, taking it into your world, that is an asset that, one of the scariest things about buying something from somebody is that person is going to disappear at some point. They may have an employment agreement for a certain period of time, but that if that person stops doing the networking and stops going out, you're in a position where that asset you're buying is not worth nearly as much. You're not going to want to pay as much for it. And that when there are real assets, a website with a certain domain authority, which you can get valuations on, and when you get Google Business Profiles with X number of reviews, not that there's not competition, not that there's not risk, but that's a real tangible thing. The phone is going to ring even if the person you're buying it from is either absentee or non-compliant.
Absolutely. And so there's got to be more than just a website, though. What else does BluShark Digital do, and how much is automated so that the law firm doesn't have to be, spending lots of man or woman labor hours doing this?
Well, look, a lot of it is the website and the Google assets. I mean, there are other ways to do it, and depending if you're in the mass tort space, paid search, paid social does it. But from the digital point of view, a well-optimized website, the best clients do look at it as a partnership, not as a negative, but as a positive, in the sense that, if we have their point of view coming through on the website, if things that clients need to do, photos, I can't stand in for their photos. Approving content, their bar license is on the line, I want to make sure they approve content. Making sure that they, it works if we go out there and do different link building activities, but what's even better is when we do it and they do it. For example, when you donate for the kids' baseball team or for a dance troupe, it's getting those links back. It's thinking about who your vendors are. It's thinking about reviews. I just talked about this earlier today on another forum where, it used to be that a review meant somebody came to your firm, used you, and was happy. Let's take even your business for a second. The number of people that have gone through the process and want to leave a 5-star review, like say in the brokering space, it's a limited number of people coming through, a certain number are raving fans, some people just may not want their name out there at all, who knows, is limited. But if somebody calls your office for a potential brokerage engagement, and that person doesn't like the tone of the person answering the phone, that could be a negative review, and it's not coming off of Google at the current way they're doing things. That's scary stuff. To me, I want to flip that on its head, and I want to take people that have done work with you, that can speak to you and what you're capable of, because as long as they can speak first person and they're not talking about, a person they've never met because they were given a gift at a trade show, but as long as they can speak to your acumen, to me, that's fair game and is there. And so when it goes back to your question, which was, it's the best clients for SEO are not set it and forget it. Paid search much more so, because you can make it almost like an Amazon seller where you can see how many sales there are, how much you spent, and it goes straight through. But to do organic right, there is the agency, if you choose to use an agency as opposed to in-house or yourself, the agency should be an extension of you and not a replacement of you.
Okay, so for example, your agency, your company, for example, would be contacting our clients and getting those reviews that actually sound intelligent and not like somebody picked them up on the corner, right? During a tornado or something, how they're always interviewed on TV. So talk to us about, with digital and websites being so national and can go all over the whole world, is there an emphasis on where we should be focusing our search and things like that?
Well, I think the biggest transformation in the digital space over the last 3 years has been local. And that when you have a product or your services that are locally desired, Google has given you an advantage. It hurt the 800-pound gorilla, not that they need more help, but that Google has created a radius around each office that's there. While pre-3 years ago, pre-proximity update, you could own Chicago from a single office and be a fat cat and be really happy. Now, it's as if Google's adding near me to the searches. And so that the value of additional offices, additional leases, additional Google profiles, that as these things are implemented, those are additional assets that are really valuable and take time, so that when you're selling something, people very often, I'm guessing, are determining, is it cheaper to build it or to buy it? And that as Google has focused on local more, the age, review count, and authority of the site become that much more important and can, I think, lead to greater value when somebody's selling the firm.
Yeah. Is there a particular company or companies that you know of that do specifically valuations of websites? There's one that we use when we're doing our valuations for our clients on their law firms, but it's a service that's free online, so I don't know how good it is.
Yeah, and I see that, and it makes me feel good about myself. But I'm not, it, like anything, it's taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
It is a touch point. I'm guessing it is rare that somebody says, I'm paying 100 cents on the value based on that online valuation. At the same time, you got to start somewhere. And I think it gives you a sense as to whether or not there's something there, right? That, you very often are going to have to describe what's there besides the principle. And I heard one of my mentors in the private equity space was telling me that he doesn't believe that a business less than 10 million has a sellable asset generally. That's his biased perspective, because you're just buying the person. Now, he's also buying stuff for multiples much, much greater than the law firms are selling for, sure, right? For maybe, 2 to 3 or 4 times X. So it's not, it's 2 or 3 times the law firm multiples, meaning anywhere from 6 to 20 times an EBITDA. But what I would say is that when you're trying to justify an ongoing concern that somebody should see value in, I definitely think that this puts a huge thumb on the scale, that even if the person disappears tomorrow and you can show organic traffic, that that this thing is continuing, that's really worth something.
Absolutely. And you couple that with having a strong team, and you have a real good business even under 10 million. So
I was saying, just to be clear,
no,
not talking law firms. I'm talking about like tech companies.
Just businesses,
and there are plenty of people that do $500 million companies all the time. It was the question of what are you getting, and to me, one of the things you can always come back with is, hey, no matter what happens, no matter how nefarious this guy is, you own this asset. You're going to have the phone ringing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as we wrap up here, what's the one thing you'd want people to walk away from today if they didn't hear anything else?
Look, I think that the world that you've are in and are doing a great job creating a beachhead in, is one where people are trying to figure out is what do they have? How do you not be my dad? How do you be somebody who has an asset to sell? And I think there are a lot of pieces to it. Much of it is making yourself non-essential. Ironically, one of the things that's happened over the last 3 to 5 years is that Google has incentivized spam or business names. And that the more you can change something from me to a something, the faster that asset will be marketable, and that the combination of making yourself non-essential with a digital asset that is, I'll call evergreen, nothing's evergreen, but as evergreen as can be, that 1-2 combination, my gander would be, makes you much more desirous when they pick up the phone and say, hey, what am I worth?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. If a client came to me, or a prospective client came to me and said, do my valuation, I want to sell my business right now, and let's assume, for this example, that my only recommendation is, look, you are good in every area except your marketing, your website, or your automatic, get clients to call you. What kind of lead time would I need to tell them to say, we can do this, but for it to be successful, how much lead time do they need to implement what you're talking about so that we can actually consider it an asset?
Great question. I think it depends on market competition and a bunch of things. I would say minimum 6 months, realistically a year, more competitive markets a year to 18 months. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and frankly what you're up against, and that the market is such that it doesn't happen overnight. They're not, people know about digital marketing, they're doing it, but that's why many things you advise people, whether from a tax point of view or a sale point of view, if they come to you and say, hey, I got to sell now, you could build a pretty website, but that's not going to have much valuation. It's really the hard work you've put and time. So I would say the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. The second best planted tree is today. But I don't see this being a quick fix. But if somebody's saying, hey, in the next 12 months I want to start getting this moved, that's a more realistic situation than I want to put lipstick on a pig and pretend that I have a real digital presence.
Right. And so how do people get in touch with you at BluShark or whomever?
Very easy to get a hold of me. I'm on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Seth J. Price. But feel free to reach out. I love talking about this stuff, as you do on valuations and selling firms. And to me, I don't feel like you have to buy something. If you have questions and no question is too stupid, feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with you.
Great. Well, I love talking about marketing as well and sales. And, to me, it's not a dirty word. And it's actually, I think, a disservice if we don't let people out there know what we do, right? Because then they don't get what they need and all that. So,
and what I love about this is these podcasts, right? I mean, think about it, all the different things you've done. We reconnected in Chicago. We probably would have pretended we would have connected and never would have. And instead, this forced us to have a 30-minute conversation. It reminds me of what you do. So next time somebody asks me, who do you go to? I'm like, I happen to know somebody, and vice versa. So to me, it's a win-win-win.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Seth, for being here. That's definitely a win for today. So, well, if you want more resources to help your law firm, then I invite you to become a member of our private Facebook group called The Art of Buying and Selling Law Firms, and continue to listen to this podcast, Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. You can also find out more information at our website, quidproquolaw.com. You have been listening to Smart Lawyers Position and Transition, which is a weekly show bringing timely and valuable information to lawyers seeking to buy or sell law firms between now and 5 years from today. The show is available 24/7 online, anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as on our website, quidproquolaw.com.